My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm 32 years old. 3 years ago, my parents told me they didn't have the money to save my 8-year-old son's life. They said they were tapped out, stretched too thin, living off Social Security and a fixed pension. 6 weeks after my son's funeral, I found a contractor invoice for $240,000. My parents had paid it in full, in cash. The work order was dated the same week they told me they couldn't help. The renovation was for my brother's new kitchen. They don't know I kept everything. The emails, the wire transfers, the building permits, the Google Photos album my mother accidentally shared with me that she forgot existed. 47 pages of proof in a manila folder I've been carrying for 2 years. Last spring, my brother collapsed during a Sunday morning run in Portland. Both kidneys failing. Stage 4 chronic kidney disease that had been quietly progressing for years and suddenly wasn't quiet anymore. His doctor said he needed a transplant. His wife wasn't a match. My parents weren't matches. The transplant coordinator called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was eating lunch at my desk. She said I was his only compatible donor. I need to take you back to understand how we got here. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a tan stucco house on Crestview Drive with a 2-car garage and a lemon tree in the backyard that never actually produced lemons. My dad, Frank, worked as a project manager for a construction company. My mother, Diane, was an office administrator at a dental practice. Comfortable. Stable. The kind of family where money was always around but never talked about directly, which meant you only understood it through what you didn't get. My brother Tyler was born in 1989. I came 4 years later, in 1993. By the time I was old enough to notice things, I'd already learned that noticing things wasn't welcome. When Tyler was 16, my dad bought him a used Jeep Cherokee for his birthday. Cleaned it up, put a bow on it, the whole thing. I remember watching Tyler's face when he saw it. Pure joy. I was 12, and I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. When I turned 16, my parents gave me a card with $40 and said they'd help me practice for my license when they had time. They were busy. My dad had a golf tournament that weekend. The following weekend, too. Tyler's college fund, when he graduated high school. $41,000. I found the statements in a filing cabinet when I was home for spring break junior year, looking for a stapler. My college fund, $9,500. I stood in that hallway for a while just staring at the numbers. When I asked my mother about it once, gently, she said Tyler was older. They'd had more time to save. And besides, I'd been such an easy baby. So low maintenance. As if the cost of raising me should somehow offset the math. Tyler went to Arizona State on a partial scholarship and graduated with no debt because my parents covered the rest. I went to University of New Mexico on student loans and graduated in 2015 with $54,000 in debt, working as a case manager for a county social services office, making $38,000 a year. At Thanksgiving 2018, Tyler announced he'd closed a real estate deal that netted him $680,000 in commission. My dad stood up from the table and hugged him. Actually stood up mid-meal and hugged him. My mother cried. Happy tears. The good kind. I'd just gotten promoted to senior case manager. I mentioned it when they sat back down. My mother said, "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," and passed the green beans. I met Daniel in 2014 at a work training seminar. He was a high school history teacher. He had patient eyes and a laugh that made strangers smile across restaurants. My parents asked, at separate times, in separate conversations, whether teaching was really a sustainable career path long-term. Tyler's girlfriend at the time was a corporate attorney. My parents called her impressive. They called Daniel sweet. Daniel proposed in 2016 with a ring he'd saved for on a teacher's salary for 8 months. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We got married in October at a small venue in Albuquerque with 60 people and sunflowers everywhere. My parents gave us $1,000 as a wedding gift. I found out later they'd given Tyler and his then-girlfriend $12,000 for a vacation to Italy as a congratulations on your promotion gift that same year. Noah Daniel Torres was born on March 7, 2017. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, born at Presbyterian Hospital, Albuquerque. He had Daniel's dark eyes, and a head full of black hair, and a way of looking at you like he already understood something you hadn't figured out yet. My parents visited once in his first 6 months. Tyler sent a gift card. I told myself it was fine. I had Daniel. I had Noah. That was enough. I told myself that until October 2nd, 2021, which is the day everything I'd been telling myself stopped working, Noah fainted on a Saturday morning in our backyard. He'd been kicking a soccer ball against the fence, and I was sitting on the porch with coffee, watching him. And then he was just on the ground. He was 8 years old and he was on the grass and not moving. I was across that yard so fast I don't remember standing up. He was conscious by the time I reached him, confused, a little scared, saying he felt dizzy. His face was the color of old dishwater. Daniel called 911. The paramedics came. At the hospital, they ran blood work and found his creatinine levels were severely elevated. The ER doctor referred us immediately to pediatric nephrology at University of New Mexico Children's Hospital. The appointment was October 9th. Dr. Miriam Castillo, pediatric nephrologist. She had reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and she spoke the way people speak when they've had to deliver hard news so many times they've become very careful with language. She sat across from Daniel and me and explained that Noah's kidneys were functioning at 14% capacity. That this wasn't something that had happened suddenly. It had been progressing for years, likely since birth. A congenital condition that had stayed quiet until it couldn't anymore. She said he needed a kidney transplant. I heard the words the way you hear words, when your brain refuses to process them in order. Transplant. 8 years old. Daniel reached over and took my hand. What does this mean for right now? I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. It means we move quickly, doctor, Castillo said. The waitlist for a pediatric deceased donor kidney averages 3 to 5 years. With his current function, we don't have that kind of time. Ideally, we find a living donor, a parent, sibling, close relative. Living donor transplants have significantly better outcomes. His 5-year survival rate with a successful living donor transplant is around 88%. And without, Daniel said. Without a transplant, she said, Noah's kidneys will continue to fail. Dialysis can buy time, but it's not a long-term solution for a child. We need to get him listed and tested as soon as possible. There's a registration deposit required to initiate the formal transplant workup. It covers the donor screening, the cross-match labs, the pre-surgical evaluations. She slid a paper across the desk. I looked at it for a long time. Registration and pre-transplant workup deposit, $78,000. Estimated insurance coverage, $31,500. Patient responsibility, $46,500. I stared at the number. $46,500. Daniel was squeezing my hand hard enough that my fingers went white. We drove home in silence. Noah was at school, completely unaware, probably trading snacks at lunch with his best friend Carlos. When we walked through the front door, I sat down on the kitchen floor. Just sat down. Daniel sat down next to me. We stayed like that for a while. That night, we went through everything. Savings. $8,200. Daniel's 403B. He could borrow against it, maybe pull $22,000 after penalties. My accounts, $14,000. Our house. We were renting. Credit cards. We had one with a $6,000 limit we'd been paying down since Noah's last round of medical bills 2 years earlier, when they'd found a heart murmur that turned out to be benign. We were $24,000 short before we even started. Daniel said it before I did. He looked at me across the kitchen table at midnight and said, "We have to ask your parents." I hadn't asked my parents for money since I was 22 and called to ask if they could loan me $800 for a car repair. And my mother had sighed and said they were very tight right then, and I'd said never mind and put it on a credit card. That was 10 years ago. But this was Noah. I called my mother on October 15th at 7:00 the evening. The call lasted 9 minutes. She listened. I explained everything, the diagnosis, the timeline, the deposit, how much we had, how much we needed. There was a long pause when I finished. Then she said, "Oh, Becca, That's just devastating. Have you looked into hospital charity care programs? Some hospitals have financial assistance. We're looking at everything, I said. But we need to move fast. Mom, I need to ask if you and Dad can help. Honey, she said. Her voice shifted into something practiced. Something careful. You know we want to help, but we're retired. Everything is locked up. Our pensions barely cover our expenses. We can't just pull money out of thin air. Can you talk to Dad tonight? I said. I'll call you both tomorrow. Of course, she said. We'll talk. My father called back 2 days later. He did most of the talking. Mom was quiet in the background the way she always was when Dad was delivering a decision that had already been made. He said their retirement accounts were mostly in annuities. Said liquidating early would cost them 30 to 40% in penalties. Said they were on a fixed income and had to think about their future long-term care needs. Said they wished they could do more. Said they were praying for Noah. Dad, I said, Noah needs a kidney. We know that, he said. We understand how serious it is. But we can't jeopardize our financial security, Becca. You need to explore medical financing options, care credit, payment plans with the hospital, community fundraising. We did a GoFundMe. I didn't say that part out loud. We'd started it the week before. In 3 weeks we raised $19,400 from 1,102 people. Strangers. Co-workers. Noah's second-grade teacher donated $200. My college roommate posted it to every platform she had. My parents commented on the GoFundMe post, praying for our sweet Noah. They did not donate. We were still short. I asked Daniel to call my dad directly. I don't know why I thought it would be different. It wasn't. My dad told Daniel they'd already given what they could, which was nothing, and that he should look into whether Noah's biological baseline made transplant success realistic. Daniel called me from his car afterward and told me what my dad had said, and his voice was flat and quiet in a way I'd only heard once before, when his own father died. On November 4th, Daniel and I drove to Scottsdale, Arizona. My parents had retired there in 2019, a house in a golf community called Desert Willow Estates, 4 bedrooms, a backyard pool, a kitchen they'd redone the year before, new quartz countertops, new appliances, Sub-Zero refrigerator. I remember standing in that kitchen while my mother made tea, and thinking that the refrigerator alone probably cost more than Noah's remaining deposit gap. We sat at their dining room table. I explained again. The deadline. The hours ticking down. Noah starting dialysis that week for the first time, scared and trying not to show it because he was 8 and he was trying to be brave. My mother cried. She held my hands. She said, "If we had it, you know we'd give it. You know that." I looked at the Sub-Zero refrigerator. I didn't say anything about it. I flew home and waited for a miracle that didn't come. The deposit deadline was November 30th, 2021. We missed it by $24,300. We stayed on a provisional wait list, but without the full workup completed, Noah's priority status dropped. Dr. Castillo called me herself to deliver that news. She said we weren't done, that there were still paths forward, that she wasn't giving up. I thanked her and hung up and went into the bathroom and sat on the floor of the shower with the water running cold because I'd used all the hot. Noah spent most of December in and out of the hospital. He was on dialysis 3 times a week. He was tired all the time. He'd fall asleep doing homework. He stopped asking to play soccer. For Christmas that year, he asked for a book about ocean animals, because he said he didn't have the energy for anything that needed batteries. I read that book to him every night for 2 weeks until he'd memorized half of it. He died on January 18th, 2022, at 9:03 the morning. Sepsis. A dialysis access infection that moved faster than anyone expected. He'd been admitted 4 days earlier. Daniel and I didn't leave. We took shifts sleeping in the chair next to his bed. On the morning of the 18th, he was awake, and we were holding his hands, and then he wasn't. I won't write more about that morning. Some things don't have words that work. My parents came for the funeral. February 2nd, 2022, at Sunset Memorial Park in Albuquerque. They sat 3 rows back. They did not sit with Daniel and me. My mother was wearing her good coat and real pearl earrings. Afterward, in the parking lot, she tried to hug me. I stepped back. I said, "Don't," my dad said. "Becca, we loved him." I said, "I know you did." And then I walked away. They mailed a sympathy card 3 days later with a check for $300. I deposited it and donated all of it to the University of New Mexico Children's Hospital Kidney Fund in Noah's name. For 6 weeks after Noah's funeral, I didn't function in any real way. Daniel went back to school because the semester didn't pause for grief and someone had to pay the rent. I stayed home. I sat in Noah's room. I reread the Ocean Animals book until the pages were soft. I didn't sleep in useful hours. I was awake at 3 a.m. most nights. Not crying, just existing in the dark, which is somehow worse. On March 14th, 2022, at 2:30 inches the morning, I was on my phone scrolling without seeing anything when a photo popped up in a shared album my mother had invited me to 4 years earlier. Family Photos, the album was called. She'd forgotten I was still in it, apparently. She'd added new pictures that night. The photos were of my brother Tyler's renovated kitchen. Tyler and his wife Maya standing in front of new walnut cabinetry, a waterfall edge marble island, a range hood that looked like it belonged in a restaurant, a window seat overlooking their backyard in Portland. My mother had written in the caption, "Our boy's kitchen finally done. All the hard work worth it. So proud." 42 likes. The comments were all exclamation points. I put my phone down. I lay in the dark. I did not sleep. For the next 3 weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about that kitchen. Not because of the kitchen itself, but because of something specific I remembered. Tyler had mentioned around Thanksgiving, the year before Noah got sick, that he wanted to renovate, but it was expensive. He'd mentioned it the way you mention things that aren't happening yet. On April 8th, 2022, at 4 inches the morning, I opened my laptop. I'm not entirely sure what I was looking for. Maybe just confirmation of something I already suspected. I went to the Multnomah County permit portal, which is public record. Anyone can search it. I put in Tyler's address on S.E. Hawthorne Boulevard, Portland. The permit pulled up immediately. Kitchen and primary bathroom renovation. Permit issued September 14th, 2021. Contractor, Cascadia Home Design. Project value declared, $238,500. September 14th, 2021. 3 weeks before my parents told me they had no liquidity to help with Noah's deposit. I sat with that for a minute. Then I started searching. Cascadia Home Design had a business profile with reviews. I found a review from Tyler himself, posted in November 2021. "Incredible work, highly recommend, all paid up front as agreed." Paid up front. Cash. I went to the Multnomah County property records. Tyler's house was under his name and Maya's. Purchase price in 2018, $610,000. I pulled the lien history. No second mortgage. No home equity line of credit pulled around that time, which meant the $238,500 came from somewhere liquid. Then I remembered something. My parents had mentioned, casually, at one point, that they'd helped Tyler with some work on the house. A small thing, they'd said. I hadn't asked for details because I hadn't needed to yet. On April 11th, I called Tyler. I kept my voice light. "Hey," I said. "I saw the kitchen photos Mom posted. It looks beautiful." He thanked me. I said, "Mom mentioned she and Dad helped out a little." He paused half a second too long. "Yeah," he said. "They helped out. It was a nice thing for them to do." That pause, that half second, I have an iCloud account that I've had since 2013. I still have it tied to an old email address. When my parents got their first iPhones in 2015, I helped them set up their accounts. My dad was impatient with technology and asked me to just handle the whole thing. I set up his Apple ID using his email. He asked me to write down the password, which I did, in a notebook I still have. On April 13th, I typed that password into iCloud. I told myself I'd close it immediately if it didn't work. It worked. My dad's emails were still synced. He hadn't changed his password in 7 years. I searched, Tyler, renovation, kitchen. The email came up on the first result. From Frank Torres to Tyler Torres CC. Diane Torres. Date, August 22nd, 2021, 8:41 p.m. Subject, final contractor. Quote, Tyler, your mother and I have reviewed everything. Cascadia's quote is fair for the scope of work. We want to do this for you. We've talked about it, and we agree. You work hard, you've built something real, and this is a good investment in the property value. I'll initiate the wire transfer this week from our joint savings. $240,000 to cover the full project plus buffer for overruns. The house will be worth significantly more when it's done. Your mother is excited about the window seat. This is what we've been saving for. Family comes first. Love, Dad. August 22nd, 2021. I had called my mother on October 15th to ask for help with Noah's deposit. She had said they were tapped out. They had wired $240,000 to Tyler's contractor 7 weeks before telling me they had no liquidity. I took a screenshot, then I kept going. Dad's Fidelity account statement. Saved to iCloud files from that same month. Balance as of August 2021, $892,000. Mom's rollover IRA. Statement also in his files. Lo Shi Wen Sis Hen Meiyuan. Over $1.5 million between them. But no liquidity, he'd said. Everything is locked up. I made a document. I needed to see it in order. August 22nd, 2021. Wire transfer initiated. $240,000. Frank and Diane Torres to Cascadia Home Design Contractor escrow for Tyler Torres's renovation. September 14th, 2021. Renovation permit issued. Work begins. October 15th, 2021. I call my mother asking for $46,500 to save Noah's life. She says they're tapped out. October 17th, 2021. My father calls back, says everything is locked up, says they can't jeopardize their retirement. November 30th, 2021. We missed the deposit deadline. Noah's transplant priority drops. January 18th, 2022. Noah dies. November 2021 to February 2022. Renovation photos posted to family album. I printed everything. The email. The wire transfer confirmation I found in a forwarded receipt in his email. The permit. The account statements. The contractor review. Tyler had left. I put it all in a manila folder. Then I called my mother. I said I'd been thinking. I said I wanted to see them. I said maybe it was time to try to talk. She was crying before I finished the sentence. She said yes, of course. Whenever I wanted, they'd come to Albuquerque, they'd fly anywhere, they'd do anything. I said Scottsdale, actually, their house. Daniel and I would come to them. 2 weeks, Saturday. Daniel asked me that night if I was sure. I showed him the folder. He read the email twice. He put it down on the table. He didn't say anything. I watched his face, and I thought about the 7 years he had loved Noah and how he had never once asked my parents for anything for himself. He looked up at me and said, "Okay." We flew to Scottsdale on a Saturday in April, booked on a credit card. Tyler was already there. My parents had invited him separately, told him we were coming, framed it as a family reconciliation. He and Maya were in the living room when we arrived. My mother opened the door and held me for a long time. She was crying immediately. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn my whole life, and for a second I was 6 years old and she was the person who could fix things. Then I stepped back. My dad shook Daniel's hand. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping well. Good, I thought. Tyler stood and said, "Hey, sis." Awkward and careful. Maya hugged me and said she was so sorry about Noah, genuinely, and I believed her. We sat down to dinner. The kitchen was beautiful, I noticed. The window seat, the marble island, the walnut cabinets exactly as they'd appeared in the photo. For the first 15 minutes, we talked about nothing. My mother asked about Daniel's school. Tyler mentioned a new development he was working on near the waterfront. My dad asked how I was adjusting back to work. The normal noises of a family pretending. Then, Tyler said, "It's really good to have everyone together." He said it the way people say things when they want them to be true. I reached into my bag. I put the folder on the table. Tyler looked at it. My dad looked at it. My mother looked at me. I opened it to the first page. This, I said, is Noah's death certificate. January 18th, 2022. Cause of death: sepsis secondary to end-stage renal disease. Signed by Dr. Angela Park. My mother put her hand over her mouth. I turned to the second page. This is the University of New Mexico Children's Hospital deposit summary. Patient, Noah Torres. Amount required, $46,500. Amount we raised, $22,200. Amount we were short, $24,300. The deadline we missed, November 30th, 2021. My dad's jaw moved slightly. He didn't speak. Next page. I slid it across the table. Wire transfer confirmation. August 22nd, 2021. $240,000. From your joint savings account to Cascadia Home Design Escrow for Tyler Torres's renovation. 7 weeks before you told me you had no money. Tyler stared at the paper. Maya looked at Tyler. Next page, I said. Email. Dad to Tyler, August 22nd, 2021. I read it out loud. All of it. When I got to family comes first, I had to stop for a moment. But I kept going. Last pages, I said. Your Fidelity account, Dad. August 2021. $892,000. Mom's IRA. $614,000. Over $1.5 million. But no liquidity. My dad stood up. Becca, he said. His voice had that old authority in it, the one I'd spent my whole life deferring to. This is not what it looks like. I looked up at him. What does it look like, Dad? We were trying to protect our retirement. We're old, you have to understand. You said you had nothing, I said. You said everything was locked up. You wired $240,000 to Tyler's kitchen contractor. And then you told me you couldn't give me $24,000 to save your grandson's life. Tyler stood up then. Becca. His voice was quiet. I didn't know about Noah's funding situation. I thought you guys had it handled. Mom and Dad said you were managing. They told you we were managing? I said. He looked at my parents. They said there was a situation but that you had support through the hospital. They had told him we were managing. I turned back to my dad. He was standing at the head of the table, the same posture he'd had my entire childhood when he was certain he was right. For the first time I noticed how it looked from the outside. You had the money, I said, the whole time. You told me you had nothing and you had over $1.5 million. You wired $240,000 to Tyler's kitchen while Noah was on a provisional wait list. You watched him go on dialysis at 8 years old and you came to his funeral in your good coat and you sent a $300 check. My mother was sobbing. Tyler looked pale. My dad said, we made a decision we believed was financially responsible. Real estate appreciates. Medical costs are unpredictable. Tyler's renovation was an investment in an appreciating asset. Noah's situation was... He stopped. Was what? My voice was very quiet now. His face tightened. You want me to say it? We didn't know if Noah would survive even with the transplant. The success rate, 88%, I said. With a living donor, 88%. You looked me in the eye and said you had nothing. You had 88% odds of saving your grandson in your savings account, and you spent it on a kitchen. My mother's chair scraped back and she reached for me. I stood up. Tyler, I said. He looked at me. How do you like the window seat? He didn't answer. I picked up my folder. I looked at my father. You will not contact me. You won't call Daniel. You won't send cards. You won't show up to anything. If you ever want to see me again, which I doubt, it will be because you've done something that actually matters, not something that costs you nothing. I'm leaving now. I looked at my mother. She was shaking. Noah's name is on a donation record at UNM Children's Hospital, I said. The $300 you sent. He's there. He'll always be there. That's the only thing you did right. Daniel and I walked out. The door closed. I heard my mother's voice rising, and my father's, and nothing that came after. I changed my number the following week. My parents called Daniel's number 16 times in 2 days. He blocked them after the first one and told me about it without me having to ask. Tyler texted me once. He said, "I swear I didn't know. I need you to believe me." I replied, "I don't know what I believe. Don't contact me again right now." He didn't. I went back to work. I kept going to therapy, Dr. Sandra Okafor on Thursday mornings, and for a long time the sessions were mostly silence, and then slowly they weren't. I got better at sleeping. I cleaned out Noah's room in stages over 6 months, keeping the ocean animals book, keeping the small ceramic dolphin he'd won at a school carnival, keeping his handwriting on a birthday card he'd made me the year before he got sick. "Mom, you're the best." He hadn't learned the difference between your and your yet. I kept it on my nightstand. In the fall of 2023, I changed jobs. I became a patient advocate at Presbyterian Hospital, helping families navigate the financial side of pediatric illness. I understood them. I sat across from parents who had just heard numbers that didn't make sense, and I held the information with them until it started to make sense. I knew what they were feeling. It mattered to know what they were feeling. I thought I was done with my family. I thought I had made a clean cut and that it would hold. I thought there was nothing left that could require me to make another choice about them. Then my phone rang on a Thursday afternoon in April 2025. Unknown number? I almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up on the fourth ring. "Becca," my brother's voice. I recognized it immediately despite the years. "I know you said not to call," he said. "I know. But I need you to hear this. Just don't hang up. Please." He told me. Both kidneys, progressive damage. He'd been diagnosed 18 months earlier and had kept it quiet, kept hoping things would stabilize. They hadn't. He was in the hospital in Portland. His nephrologist had told him he needed a transplant. His wife Maya had been tested, not a match. My parents had been tested, not matches. They had submitted to the National Registry. His doctor had given him a realistic timeline without a transplant. "The coordinator will be calling you," he said. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." I didn't say anything. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I know that. I know what happened. I've known for 2 years what Mom and Dad did. I found out when I found the email you read at dinner. I confronted them about it, and they admitted everything, and I've spent 2 years not knowing how to say I'm sorry to you in any way that could be enough. I should have called. I should have done something. I didn't. And that's on me." I said, "Why are you telling me now?" "Because if you say no, I want you to know that I understand. And if you say yes, I need you to know it's not because of them. It's not because of anything except that I'm your brother, and I'm asking you." I hung up. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 20 minutes. The transplant coordinator called 2 days later. Her name was Jennifer Cho. She explained the process, the testing, the compatibility screening. She said Tyler's subtype required a close genetic match. She said siblings had roughly a 25% chance. She asked if I would be willing to come in for blood work. "Just testing," she said. "No commitment beyond that." I said I'd think about it. 3 days later, I went in for the blood draw. I told myself it was just information. Jennifer called me the following Wednesday. "Miss Torres," she said, "the results are back. You're a 6 out of 6 antigen match. That's the best possible outcome. You're an excellent candidate for living donation." I sat with that for a long time. That night I called Dr. Okafor. "Emergency session," she said. "No problem," and we sat on the phone for an hour. She asked me what I was afraid of. I said I wasn't afraid. She said that wasn't what she asked. I said I was afraid that if I did this, nothing would change. That they would take it and not change, and I would have given something irreplaceable and still be standing in the same place I'd been standing in for 3 years. She asked me what Noah would say. I knew the answer. I had always known the answer. He would say, "Mom, just help him." He would say it the way he said everything, matter of fact, certain, like kindness was the obvious choice. I called Jennifer the next morning. I said I'd do it. She started going through logistics and I stopped her. I said, "I have conditions. There are things I need before I agree." She said, "Of course. What do you need?" I said, "I don't want to see my parents before, during, or after. I want a private room. I want the surgical team to know that no one is to share my location with anyone in my family except my husband. I need it in writing that these conditions will be enforced. She said, "We can absolutely arrange all of that." I said, "And Tyler needs to know something. Can you tell him I need to speak with him by phone before I agree to move forward?" She said yes. Tyler called me that same evening. I said, "If I do this, we are not repaying a debt. I am not doing this because we're family. I'm doing this because my son would have done it, and I'm trying to be the person he thought I was. Do you understand the difference?" He was quiet. Then he said, "Yes." I said, "After this, you and I start from zero. Not from where we were before, not like nothing happened. From zero. Whatever we become, if anything, we build it from scratch. And I need you to tell Mom and Dad that I don't want contact. For at least a year. I need you to enforce that." He said, "I'll make sure of it." The surgery was on a Thursday morning in May. Daniel held my hand until they wheeled me into pre-op. The nurse who prepped my IV had kind eyes. She said, "You must love your brother very much." I said, "It's more complicated than that." She nodded like she understood. I woke up in recovery 3 hours later. My hip hurt. My mouth was dry. Daniel was in the chair next to the bed with his coffee going cold in his hand and his eyes open. He looked at me and put the coffee down. "Did it go okay?" I said. He said, "Better than okay. They said it was textbook. Tyler is already in his procedure." I closed my eyes. I felt hollowed out in a way that was different from grief. Lighter, maybe, like I'd been carrying something for a long time and set it down on purpose. The recovery nurse came in and asked about my pain. I said a 5. She adjusted something in my IV, and I felt my body start to unknot. She said Tyler's transplant team had confirmed successful perfusion. The kidney was working. Daniel stayed with me for 2 days. He slept in the recliner they brought in. He made me eat the hospital food even when I didn't want to. On the second day he said, "I'm proud of you." I said, "Don't give me too much credit." He said, "I'm not giving you any credit you didn't earn." Jennifer came by to check on me the morning of my discharge. She said Tyler was doing well, that the early markers were all positive, that his function was already significantly improved. She said thank you, in the particular way people thank you when they mean something more than the word. I said, "Please don't tell his family what floor I'm on." She said, "Already handled." 6 weeks after the surgery, I was home, back at work part-time, still sore but functional. On a Tuesday evening I got a text from an unknown number. It was Tyler. "New number," he said. "I didn't know if you had the old one blocked. Just wanted to say, I'm doing well, the doctors are pleased. I'll never be able to say this right, but thank you. Not for the kidney, for being better than all of us." I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, "I'm glad you're okay. Give me some time." He wrote, "Take all the time you need." I put my phone down and finished my dinner. 3 months later, a letter arrived to Jennifer's office, and she forwarded it to me with a note asking if I wanted it. I said yes. The envelope was thick, my mother's handwriting. I opened it at my kitchen table with Daniel sitting across from me. She wrote that she didn't expect anything from me, that she wasn't writing to ask for forgiveness, that she understood, now, what they had done, not as an abstraction but in full, and that understanding it had changed her in ways she didn't have words for yet. She wrote that she and my father had gone back to Albuquerque and visited Noah's plaque at the hospital donation wall, that they'd stood in front of his name for a long time, that my dad had cried for the first time she'd seen in 30 years of marriage. She wrote that they had sold their Scottsdale house, that the full proceeds, $410,000, had been wired directly to the UNM Children's Hospital Kidney Transplant Fund in Noah's name. She included the donation receipt. I held it in my hands. She wrote, "We don't deserve your love. We're not asking for it. We just want you to know that we know what we did, and that we are trying to become people who would have made a different choice. We are too late for Noah. We know that. We will be too late for the rest of our lives. But we are trying anyway." I sat at that table for a while. I called Dr. Okafor the next morning. I told her about the letter. She asked how it made me feel. I said, "I don't know. Less like I'm carrying it alone. She said, "That's something." I said, "Is it enough?" She said, "That's not a question I can answer for you." I waited 9 months. I thought about it the way you think about something you're not sure is safe yet. I watched the donation receipt on my refrigerator, where I'd put it under a magnet next to a photo of Noah with the Ocean Animals book. I watched it change from something painful to look at into something else, something I didn't have a word for yet. On a Sunday morning in March, I called my mother. She answered before the second ring was done. I could hear that she'd been waiting for a call like this, maybe for 2 years, maybe longer. I said, "I'd like to have coffee sometime, just you and Dad. At a place I choose. 1 hour. No promises about what happens after." She said, "Yes, whenever. We'll come wherever you are." I said, "Give me 2 weeks. I'll let you know." I hung up. I looked at Daniel across the kitchen. He was waiting. I said, "I called her," he said. "How do you feel?" I looked out the window at the backyard where we'd planted a small ash tree the fall after Noah died. It was just starting to go green again for the spring, one branch at a time. I said, "I don't know yet, but I think I needed to do it." People ask me if I've forgiven them. I don't have that answer. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through once. It's more like a room you keep having to choose to enter, and some days you do, and some days you stand outside it. I have days when I think about the kitchen island and I feel the old rage come up as clean and sharp as it ever was. I have other days when I hold the donation receipt and think about the children who will have a chance because of that money. Children like Noah, who just needed someone to say yes. I saved Tyler because my son would have. Not because I believe in redemption arcs, or because the right thing announces itself cleanly. Because Noah was 8 years old and he saw the world in a way that made kindness seem simple, and he taught me something I didn't fully understand until after he was gone. Love is not a ledger. My parents kept a ledger. They put Tyler on one side and kept adding. They put Noah on the other side and called it a bad bet. They were wrong in a way that cost him everything. I chose not to be them. That's the only thing I'm certain of. His tree is blooming in the backyard. I can see it from where I'm sitting right now. Daniel made coffee. My phone is on the table. My mother's number is no longer blocked. I haven't called yet today, but I might. If this story reached you, if any part of it felt familiar or true, I want to hear from you. Would you have said yes? Would you have walked away and let him go? Leave me a comment. I read every single one. And if you know someone carrying something like this, someone navigating impossible choices with people who should have done better, share this with them. Sometimes the only thing that helps is knowing someone else found a way through. I'm still finding mine. But I'm still here. And today, that's enough.